Let's go to Revelation chapter 5. We're pretty close to the end here. We're going to pick up at verse 10, but let's review. Always. Because remember, we're in the flow of something. We don't want to treat the Bible, which sometimes the layout of our Bibles makes this easier to do than we wish it was. But it's easy to take parts of the Bible and make them individual segments that they aren't really. Because we have not only chapter breaks, we have headings, we have little verse numbers. So, we look at chunks together because it's helpful, but we just don't want to lose the flow of it. So, let's review the flow so we know where we are in the vision. Chapter 1. What happens in chapter 1? After the introduction. Let's get to the vision part. What's the vision part in chapter 1?
The vision of Christ.
Yes, very good. And it starts by his hearing a voice, right? The voice tells him to write on a scroll. That's chapter 1, verse 11. Write on a scroll and send to these 7 churches. Then that's when he turns around. What are some of the details he saw? Now, he collapses about instantly when he sees this person because of the glory, but later he writes down what he saw. What are some of the details he saw of Christ? Or at least the vision of Christ?
7 golden lampstands.
Good. That's the first thing, right? Before he even sees Christ, he sees his environment, which is the 7 lampstands. And what are those lampstands meant to represent? Good. Those 7 churches he just mentioned, yeah. What else did he notice about this Christ vision? What is that? What was it? Yeah, and how far did it go down? Yeah, that was significant. We talked about what that might indicate. But it speaks of someone important, wealthy, powerful. The average worker does not wear their clothing down to their feet. That's not normal. What else?
Golden sash.
Yes. Which again, that speaks of wealth, position, power. Some think it indicates priesthood. Maybe. Could be. What else?
Hair was white.
Yeah. Now we looked at this throughout the Old and New Testaments. That indicates divine being, supernatural heavenly being, glory. But also, on a human level, what does white hair indicate?
Mature.
Good.
Maturity.
There you go. Maturity, yeah.
Maturity. Oh, okay.
It typically...
We've all got it.
Because of its association with age, it is also associated with wisdom, right? Because experience and learning about life, right? So, certainly the wisdom part is there, but also the divine radiance and brilliance. Any other details that come to mind as significant?
Eyes like fire.
Eyes of fire. Man, that's one of the most haunting pictures of the whole book of Revelation to me. Because, first of all, it's weird. I mean, people's eyes aren't usually burning with fire. But because it says so much about who Jesus is in his ability to see things as they really are. The fire, as I understand it at least, it represents judgment of burning away what is unworthy. You burn away the dross, and what's left is what's real. And his eyes can do that. He sees what is real. He doesn't get fooled by our nonsense. So, then, Jesus is kind enough to lift up John, because he's collapsed in the glory of the vision. He lifts him up, tells him to write down what he's about to say, send it to the 7 churches. But, he says, write down what you have seen, what is now, what will take place later. That's kind of our guide through the vision. So, chapters 2 and 3, the dictation. He's writing to the 7 churches. Jesus introduces himself. He either tells them why he's happy about them, why he's upset at them, both. And then he closes it out with promises. To whom?
The victors.
Yes, those who overcome, those who conquer, with him, no doubt. That's the story of the Revelation. So, we took a long time going through those letters because we want to learn from those churches' examples, from Jesus' own words, what he cares about, what he hates, what he loves, and those promises. Oh my goodness. Those self-descriptions of Jesus. Oh my goodness. Oh, these 2 chapters are gold. Then we go to chapter 4, and now we go from dictation of letters. Boy, the vision's really picking up now in terms of what John starts to see unfolding before his eyes. He's brought up to heaven, and what are some of the beings, or what are some of the things he's seeing or hearing?
Throne.
Good. The big one, right? The throne. Someone sitting on it. The appearance of reddish, apparently. Reddish appearance of this person on the throne. What else?
24 elders.
Good. Around that throne are 24 other thrones. Thrones, mind you. And on those thrones are elders. There are two things of appearance that we need to remember. They're dressed in white, and they have golden victory crowns on their head. Not ruling crowns, victory crowns. Okay. Like the wreaths. Then what else? Or who else?
The beings.
Ooh, the four living creatures. Those weird looking things. So remember, they have faces of different earthly creatures. What are the four?
Lion.
Eagle, lion,
Ox.
ox, human. All right. They have wings.
They do.
6 of them. They are covered in... Okay, yeah, that thing. Lose a lot of people right there. I'm out. Anyway, so they are chanting their worship to God. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. When they do that, the 24 elders fall down. They put their crowns before the throne, and they say, this is chapter 4, verse 11, "You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being." So the focus here is on God as creator. And the creation in heaven at least, is honoring him for that. Now in chapter 5, things start to really get intense. As if that was not intense enough. Remember that John's expecting to find something out about what heaven is going to do about things on earth. That's what happens when prophets are brought up to heaven, or are given visions of God. So finally, when we get to the part here in chapter 5, he starts to see something happening about that. The scroll in the right hand of the one on the throne, and an angel asks, "Who can open it? Who's worthy?" And John is just totally deflated because no one, and he gives a pretty broad category of the no one, right? Now let's look at the category, because this is going to come up in our study tonight. Look at chapter 5, verse 3. "No one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside it." I mean, how devastating is that? We're finally going to see what God's going to do about all this mess, and no one can make it happen or even find out about it. So finally, in his weeping, he hears from one of those 24 elders, "Don't weep. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He's able to open the scroll and its 7 seals." And now we're reviewing what we're about to read, so I'll stop there. Okay, will someone read chapter 5 for us? Okay, thank you, Nancy.
How far do you want me to go?
The whole chapter, yep.
"And I saw a scroll in the right hand of the one who was sitting on the throne. There was writing on the inside and the outside of the scroll, and it was sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel who shouted with a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to break the seals on this scroll and unroll it?' But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll and read it. Then I wept because no one could be found who was worthy to open the scroll and read it. But one of the 24 elders said to me, 'Stop weeping. Look, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the heir to David's throne, has conquered. He is worthy to open the scroll and break its 7 seals.' I looked and I saw a lamb that had been killed, but was now standing between the throne and the 4 living beings, and among the 24 elders. He had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God that are sent out into every part of the earth. He stepped forward and took the scroll from the right hand of the one sitting on the throne. And he took the scroll, and as he took the scroll, the 4 living beings and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each one had a harp, and they held gold bowls filled with incense, the prayers of God's people. And they sang a new song with these words, 'You are worthy to take the scroll and break its seals and open it. For you were killed, and your blood has ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation. And you have caused them to become God's kingdom and his priests, and they will reign on the earth.' Then I looked again, and I heard the singing of thousands and millions of angels around the throne and the living beings and the elders. And they sang in a mighty chorus, 'The Lamb is worthy, the Lamb who was killed. He is worthy to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing.' And then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea. They also sang, Blessing and honor and glory and power belong to the one sitting on the throne, and to the Lamb forever and ever. And the 4 living beings said, Amen.
Amen.
And the 24 elders fell down and worshiped God and the Lamb.
Thank you. So far in chapter 4, the only beings to worship that we've seen are the 4 beings, 4 living creatures, and they're worshiping the one on the throne. We see the 24 elders responding with worship. And who are they? Who are the 24 elders worshiping at the end of chapter 4? Yeah. So far in chapter 4, all the heavenly beings we've seen so far worship, and they all worship the one on the throne, who we would call Father God. In chapter 5, more worship goes on. And who is it that starts the worship? In verse 8 we see, once the Lamb has arrived and taken the scroll, once he takes the scroll, according to chapter 5, verse 8, all of those same beings, the 4 and the 24, they have harps, they fall down with their golden bowls full of incense, and then they sing a song. And we ended here last time, or we talked about this last time. It's new because something new has happened in God's universe. Something remarkable has gone on that had never gone on before, which is that there was one who was slain to purchase people from every category, right? So far in our look at the Revelation, there's only been 28 worshipers. I can imagine that John's joining in to his capacity, so I'll say 29. But so far, that's the picture, right? As we go on tonight, we're going to see how the worship expands and expands with each new iteration of worship. But let's take a look at chapter 5, verse 10, because there's so much here that we've already seen, but that we need to look at again briefly, so that we don't lose sight of what the Revelation is really focused on. So just to reiterate verse 9, you, the Lamb, are worthy to take the scroll and open its seals. Why?
You were slain.
There is something about his being slain that makes him uniquely qualified for this. No one else can do this. It wasn't his existence that made him worthy. It was the fact he was slain. That changed his qualifications in some way. With your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation, and everyone in the room is like, yes, that's me too, yes. Now verse 10, you have made them. Who are the them? Everyone purchased, right? The purchased ones. Okay. So not everyone in all of the earth, not everyone from all tribes, languages, and nations. It's the ones who were purchased. So, as we move into verse 10, let's just be real clear on this one point. This is a debatable issue in the church, and I don't want to try to, solve the debate tonight. We don't have time for that. There are two main ideas of who the purchased are. Some say the purchased have already been determined. Jesus died for only certain people. Jesus died for those God knew and decided ahead of time would receive that benefit. So there are some, it would be called limited atonement. That's the theological catchphrase for that. Others, and I fit in this category just to have my cards on the table, others would say he purchased all who would come. In other words, it was an open-ended availability. It hadn't been decided who would receive it, but it was made available to all, but not everyone would receive it. Now, either way you go, you end up at the same place. Some are purchased, some are not. Some are the redeemed, some are the unredeemed. Now, this is actually totally in line with the whole story of our Bible. You go to Noah, where the great salvation was required from God's wrath. There were the saved. How many? 8. And then there were those who weren't saved. The undisclosed number of people who died and animals who died. Think of the Egypt rescue. When God took Israel out of Egypt, not all the slaves in Egypt were set free. God's people, the Israelites, were set free, and whoever would go with them. Did you know that other people left with them? That's so wild to me. I would be tempted. Would you see the God of this nobody group pummeling Egypt and their pharaoh. I'm like, okay, I could go with that. I want to be free too. Now, they may have regretted it once they got out into the wilderness. Dang, you people are in a bad spot. Why they come with you? Like we've got nothing to eat, nothing to drink. But at least in the time of God's, plagues on Egypt, they were wowed by their God, and they're like, I'm in with you. Anyhow, so this is the story all the way through. There are those who will benefit from God's salvation and others who won't. The question that Christians debate is who made that choice. Did God choose who didn't, or did humans decide they didn't want it? Or a mixture of both. Anyway, so the purchased ones are who we're talking about. Now, what do these worshiping beings in heaven who know something? This is one of the cool things to me. They know something about the Lamb's purpose for being slain. That, most of the people on earth probably had no idea about this as it was going on. But the heavenly beings know something, which makes you go back to the idea of the counsel of God. Like they were maybe in on all this discussion when God was deciding to do all this. So in verse 10, what is said by these beings that Jesus was doing with these purchased ones?
To be a kingdom and priest to serve our God.
All right, so I'm going to go with the three. Oh my, I tested all these. Okay, I'm going to go with the three main words here. And I want to make sure we just slow down long enough to try to appreciate what this is all about. Hopefully the word kingdom is becoming more and more comfortable to us when we think of the entire program of God. The kingdom of God entering into the human story in a unique way through Jesus and then growing and building through his people on earth is the story. That's the big program. Now, the kingdom was there in the Old Testament through Israel too. It just had a very unfortunate pattern, right? The kingdom pattern in the Old Testament was kind of nauseating. The more you read it and look at it, you're like, ugh, it's the same thing over and over again. The people sin against God, break covenant, so he punishes them. And then what do? They cry out for help. God, being who he is, says, okay, I love you, I'll do it. He helps them. Now they're better off than they were before. After a little time of being better off, what do? Rebel again. Then it starts. The book of Judges is like a little snapshot of that. The wheel turns. Okay. Now the kingdom really takes shape through David and the line of David, but even the line of David blows it, and so the kingdom split between Israel and Judah. Israel's taken out first. Judah's not much better. It's taken out by Babylon. The kingdom story in the Old Testament is really. It's frustrating, and that's just to me, the reader. Think about God being frustrated by this kingdom story. So the kingdom story really starts to focus in an incredibly new way in the new covenant, because the seed of David, as we saw here, he comes and announces with his cousin John, what? What's the big announcement? Repent for... Yes, it's come, guys. Here we go. And then the miracles start to demonstrate how true that is, and his teachings are like blowing people's minds, like, whoa, the kingdom's different than we thought. Now, Jesus leaves physically from the earth after his death, burial, resurrection, 40 days in his resurrected body. He goes back to the Father. So is the kingdom done now? Oh, no. We're just getting started, y'all. And we're not seeing the entire kingdom of God. We mean the earthly kingdom of God. What goes on from now? Now you get to the book of Acts, and you see how the kingdom begins to expand and push back the kingdom of Satan, and the healings are still going on, but the gospel's going out, and people are freed from the dominion of darkness. Oh, it's fantastic. By the time we get to the book of Revelation, the kingdom has grown throughout the kingdom of Caesar. And this is what would have been in the minds of the readers in the first century. The kingdom of Caesar has been invaded by the kingdom of God, and now these two kingdoms are coexisting. Are they coexisting peacefully at this point? No, because what they understand is the reason Caesar is coming after them is that they represent the enemy kingdom. To Caesar, to hear that there's a large number of Christians in the Roman Empire at that time. It kept growing and growing. To Caesar, this was a threat to his claim of lordship. The titles used of Jesus by the early Christians were purposefully the titles used of the Caesars. This is a real problem for the Caesar, because the Caesar that, if we're right about the timing of when Revelation was written, this is the Caesar that begins to demand worship of himself. And so he's saying, oh, good grief, stop it. So he's saying to people that if you don't offer up incense, remember last time we talked about incense, if you don't offer up incense to me, I'll kill you. Now, to a lot of people, if you're a Christian, you don't have to mean it. You don't have to care about the Caesar. But for goodness sake, save your neck, offer a little incense on the fire, and move on with your life. Why would the Christians not be so easily convinced that this is okay? Why would they not do a little bit of incense on the fire and move on? To them, what would offering incense on the fire to Caesar represent?
Prayer.
Well, that would be true offering, but we're talking about offering up to Caesar and worship to Caesar.
Worshipping another God.
Yes, it's idolatry. It would be saying to the true Lord, the true Caesar, that I'm more afraid of this earthly one than you. The early Christians, the faithful ones at least, couldn't stomach it. No way, can't do it. So they were being killed because they wouldn't do this. They were called atheists. Because to the Roman mind, atheist doesn't mean you don't believe in any gods. That didn't really happen. Everyone believed in gods. The question was, do you believe in the right ones? Do you believe in our gods? And if you didn't, you were called an atheist because you don't believe in our gods, including our Caesar. There's one cool story of I wish I could remember which one. One of the early church leaders, he was in the Colosseum where he was about to be judged, and he wouldn't give up his faith, so he's about to be killed, and the crowd of Romans is all there to watch, because they were sick. And the crowd, as he's being interviewed by the governor, whoever it was, they're hearing the exchange, and he won't give up his allegiance to Jesus. And so they start chanting, "Away with the atheists," meaning these Christian rabble-rousers. And the guy, I wish I could remember. But anyways, this church leader, he looks around at all the crowd and he yells back at them, "Away with the atheists!" Like, he's just, you guys are so confused. Anyway, that's the kingdom vision by the time this revelation has come. And so when the people hearing this in their little churches, some of them in persecution, others living large with wealth, and, we've looked at that. They hear that the Lamb was slain to make them a kingdom. Would that not be a huge encouragement to them? Because they aren't doing this for no reason. They're not suffering just because they got some social issue wrong. If they would just rethink this social issue. This language is going to be incredibly helpful to them to realize what's at stake here is that we are the loyal ones to the true King. We're a part of the invasion of God to win back his true kingdom. And so even though it's going to hurt us, this is why Jesus died for us. And this is something we as American Christians who live in relative peace and safety, we need to really take a note from their book. To us, Jesus died so we can go to heaven one day. True enough, but to them it's bigger than that. Jesus died to make us a kingdom so that we will be loyal to the King no matter what the other kingdom does to us. See, this language of kingdom has radically changed how I live and think and study and everything else. And I don't want us to lose sight of this. In fact, John doesn't either. Go back to chapter 1 with me. Revelation 1. And it's in verse 5, but it's kind of in the middle of verse 5. Or I should say the end of verse 5. In the NIV, verse 5 is split up, or the sentence is split up into verses 5 and 6 here. To him who loves us and has freed us from our sins by his blood. Does this sound familiar, by the way, to what we're studying in chapter 5? Worthy is the Lamb who was slain, for with his blood he purchased. I think John may have been influenced by the vision as he wrote his introduction here. To him who loves us and has freed us from our sins by his blood, and has made us to be a kingdom, and what else? Priests. To do what? To serve his God. I'm pretty sure he had this worship scene in mind when he's writing the introduction. I mean, basically put it down almost word for word here, right? And then go down to verse 9, chapter 1, verse 9. I, John, your brother and companion, in what three things? The suffering and kingdom and patient endurance, or perseverance, that are ours in Jesus. John does not want his readers, and certainly that includes us today, to forget we have been made a part of a kingdom. And that necessarily means we are going to be at odds and even at war with the other kingdom. Like, none of us could look around the world and pretend like God's kingdom's the only one around. Like, you'd be crazy. You'd be blind and crazy, living in a hole and choosing very carefully what news you hear. There's clearly a alternate kingdom option going on. And the one who rules the other kingdom, if we want to simplify it, to its core, is Satan. And he hates the ways of God because he's the father of lies, and Jesus is the true one. Correct? He is the truth. He is the faithful witness. He only says what's true. Satan only dwells on what's false, and clearly there's going to be this thing. So I really want this truth that he has made us to be a kingdom to encourage you to be courageous, to stand firmly on what's true. And Christine and I talk about this a lot when we hear what's going on in the news and our friends respond to things on Facebook culturally. No matter what in our country or in the law-making process or anything, no matter what the world tells us about the unborn, about sexuality, about gender, about any of the things that are up for grabs right now, it seems, even in churches, we have one option. We go to the King. We say, "What say you, Lord?" And that settles it for us. Amen? Amen. Now, if he doesn't say anything about it, let's be gracious to each other. But when he's clear, we got to be clear. We got to stand, because kingdom is centered on one person. Correct? Yes. It's not population dumb. It's kingdom. Like America does it differently, in the ideal of it. But kingdom, there's no question who's the central figure. It's in the title, right? And by the way, dom would be short for, it's the king's domain. We're a part of the king's domain. We're no longer a part of the enemy's domain. Thank God. What a wasteland that is, remember, I used Lion King before, but I'll do it again. Do you remember when Simba is being kind of taken on the tour of the kingdom, and he's told by Mufasa to look out there, and as far as the sun's light reaches, that's our kingdom. And then Simba asks about the dark place. No, that's not our kingdom. You don't worry about that. And it's where the hyenas live. It's all gross and dark and shadowy and death. Bones everywhere, right? Yeah, that's right. That's pretty much right. We're like, Lord, how far does your kingdom extend? Where you see the light. Now, here's the beautiful thing. He's not content to let the light and the darkness stay where they are. What's his kingdom constantly doing? Pushing it back. Can't wait. We're going to see at the end of this chapter the big payoff of all that. But we are a kingdom because Jesus has made us that. We didn't decide on this. Jesus did that for us. What we decided was to obey him and go with him. Yeah.
This may be too big a question to answer right now, but my Bible puts kings instead of kingdom.
Good. Okay.
I mean, it does say that, it gives us a little note at the bottom, but just that idea of like...
Which one is it?
Yeah, well, obviously, opinions, but where did they come up with kings?
Christ and Jesus and God?
Well, keep that in mind. Go back to chapter 5 with me, because this actually comes up in chapter 5, verse 10. Kingdom is the word kingdom there, but the word kings comes up at the end of the sentence. In the NIV it says, they will reign on the earth. What the original says is they will be kings on the earth. So we're made to be a kingdom, but we're not just like the slaves or plebs in the kingdom. These same people who are made to be a kingdom according to the final part of this, will be kings. We're going to get there, so hold that thought. In your which Bible translation do you have?
New King James.
So in chapter 5, verse 10, it says, "You have made them to be kings."
It says, "Us kings and priests to our God, and we shall reign on the earth."
Okay, so there's a difference even there with us, rather than them. So that comes up with, and the older King James was based on different Greek manuscripts that they translated from. So the newer translations have more manuscripts to work from that are older, which probably means more reliable, and there's more of them to compare. So generally when there's a translation difference like that, I've come to trust what the newer translations have decided only because they have more information to work from than the King James did. So in this particular case, I would say that this is probably the more accurate to say, has made them, the purchased ones, a kingdom. But as we're going to see at the end of verse 10, you're just waiting for later in the sentence to get the same truth. Mm-hmm. So it's not, it doesn't turn anything upside down. Mm-hmm. But what about this us thing? Because that makes a big difference. Because who is it that's saying these words in verses 9 and 10? Who's speaking?
The living creatures and the 24 elders.
If they're the ones that have been purchased and are being made a king or made kings, that totally changes our understanding compared to them, the purchased ones. Because you might make a case that the 24 elders are human followers of Jesus. We talked about that a little bit. But the 4 living creatures? That's a totally different idea. If they were purchased and they have been made kings, now we're in a different idea than what we're looking at, with them, the purchased humans, right? I mean, it takes you in a totally different direction. So for now, I'm going to assume this is the more accurate. But I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. I always want these differences to be put on the table, so just so we can be clear. What? Can I not trust my Bible? Well, yeah, you can. We just want to know why the differences are there. Now, the next one is priests. And we've looked at this one too, so I'm not going to belabor the point too much. But I want to make sure we see the connection between these two things. Why kingdom and priests? Is there a direct link between the two? Yeah. Because just like about everything else in Revelation, this has its roots in the Old Covenant, in the way God presented His whole kingdom vision, even back to the Israelites. So come with me. Let me find my spot here. I studied this. There it is. Okay. Go to Exodus 19. Because there's not much new in Revelation. What we see in Revelation is a bringing together of a whole lot of things all throughout the Bible so we can see it all in one picture. So in Exodus chapter 19, let's start in verse 3. The people have been brought out of Egypt by God's power. They are now at Mount Sinai, where Moses started when he saw the bush. And God told him, here's a sign that I'm really behind all this. When you bring them out of Egypt, you'll bring them back here. Here they are. They're back. So let's start in verse 3. Then Moses went up to God, and Yahweh called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell to the people of Israel." So what he's about to say applies to whom? All the descendants of Jacob, all the Israelites, correct?
Yes.
Not just a portion of them. Right. We would say that they are the purchased or the redeemed out of Egypt. Is that fair? Yes. That's the language of the Israelites. They were redeemed by God from slavery. So keep in mind there's a parallel already starting here. This is only being said to the purchased ones. Not to everybody, everywhere. To the purchased ones. Here's what is it said. Verse 4. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. In the parallel, this is what God did to purchase them. In our side of the parallel, it's what they said about Jesus first. You are worthy because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased peoples, correct? So again, we start with what was done to purchase. That's what God does. I brought you out of Egypt, and I brought you here to this mountain. Verse 5. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. They're the only ones this applies to in this case. Isn't that interesting that he said to his purchased ones, even way back at Sinai, if you keep this covenant I'm about to enter into with you, you're going to be a kingdom of priests for me. And I think it's fair to say they will serve him, just like in Revelation. That doesn't clarify what the connection is between these two, but it at least gives us the idea. This is not a new thing. In Revelation, we're not seeing this brand new thing pop up. This is God fulfilling what he began in the Old Covenant that did not go as it could have, should have. But he's bringing something even better out of it. Kingdom and priests, let's continue thinking about that. Let's go to 1 Peter chapter 2. Peter, of course, was a good Jew. He had learned his Old Testament before he met Rabbi Jesus. But once he met Rabbi Jesus, he came to really understand his Jewish scriptures. And he sees, if you read his writings and look at him in the book of Acts, you see how Peter makes so many connections between what we have in the New Covenant to what God did in the Old Covenant. The connections are everywhere. So 1 Peter chapter 2, look at verse 9 with me. Actually, let's back up to verse 4. And we're going to see this image that it's only a certain people this is true of. Okay. So 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 4. As you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans but chosen by God and precious to him. You also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a what? A holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For in Scripture it says, "See, I lay a stone in Zion, a chosen and precious cornerstone, and the one who trusts in him will never be put to shame." Now to you who believe, this stone is precious. Is he? Is he? Oh, come on. But to those who do not believe, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and a stone that causes people to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. There is a clear line in the sand. Those who have been accepted by God are those who belong to his Son. Those who have rejected his Son, stumbled over him, are not a part of this. They stumbled because they disobey the message, which is also what they were destined for. Verse 9. But you, who find him precious, right? You who belong to him, you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood. Now, royal indicates kingdom, correct? A holy nation, God's special possession. Aren't those exactly the phrases from Exodus 19? Peter, there's no way Peter just happened upon these phrases while he was thinking about the new covenant people. And just so you know that this isn't a fluke, go back to chapter 1 of 1 Peter. Just go a page back or so. Look at how he introduces this letter and how he refers to the disciples of Jesus. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to God's elect. That's what the Israelites were called. Exiles scattered throughout the provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. The Jews were exiles when they were taken out of the land and were taken to Babylon. Who have been chosen according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, through the sanctifying work of the Spirit, to be obedient to Jesus Christ. And look at this last phrase here. And sprinkled with his blood. What? I have never been sprinkled with blood, including Jesus's, right? That never happened to me. What is this? What is he talking about?
Mine says cleansed by his blood.
Okay. That is unfortunate, only because what we're about to talk about you probably would miss if you went with the word cleansing. The sprinkling actually is key here, because Peter is referencing backwards to the Sinai covenant. When the Israelites entered into covenant with Yahweh at the mountain, there was an actual ceremony when it started. So Moses had told them the law that he remembered from God. And then he had to go down and he had to write it all down. And then he read it to them a second time. So they've heard it twice now, the whole law that they're expected to obey. Both times they said, we'll do it. Everything God said, we'll do it. So then once God got their vow twice, he told Moses what to do. Slit the throat of bulls, the animal, collected in bowls, the plateware, and then they were to sprinkle the altar of God with the blood that represents God in the covenant. And then what else was going to be sprinkled? The people. This is disgusting. You take this blood from the bowls and you sprinkle it on all the people, because this was the signifying moment that you've entered the covenant. And the blood was meant to say, this is life or death. This is not a cute little thing you're doing. Like, if you keep the law, life. If you break it, death. This is a big deal. So when Peter talks about the disciples of Jesus being sprinkled by his blood, he doesn't mean literally. He's making a connection for us. We've entered into covenant. But this time, it's not with a bull's blood, which was pretty binding, back then. If you've entered into covenant by the blood of Messiah, how much bigger a deal is this covenant than that first one was, right? Woo, my. Now, so Peter's got that in his mind, clearly, that there's this parallel to our covenant with Jesus when he says, you're a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession. Now look at the end of, back in chapter 2, verse 9. Look at what he said our role is as this priesthood. What's our job? That you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness, that other kingdom, into his wonderful light. Oh my gosh. So when these heavenly beings, the 28 of them, say that Jesus purchased all of these people, not everybody on earth, but these people who belong to him, he purchased them to make them a kingdom and priests. This is loaded language. And it's saying what Jesus is accomplishing is what the old covenant was meant to do, but couldn't fully do. Because the people were too weak for that to work. The new covenant is something that is going to do what was always meant to be done before, but now it can be done. Because it's Messiah now, it's the Holy Spirit now, there's way more power here for us than the old covenant showed was available to them. So this is so beautiful. Now, there's a few things about priesthood I wanted to bring up. This could take the rest of our time, but I don't want to do that. This is going to be language we're going to be spotting throughout our tour of the vision here. So we'll get to those when we get to them. But go back to Revelation with me, chapter 5. The priesthood idea is something we've already seen in the vision. I mentioned before those 24 the 24 elders in chapter 4. What are they wearing? That, and then what else? White robes. Now the priests of Israel were to wear what kind of white linen robes? They wore white robes. How many divisions of priests were there when David set up the priestly thing? 24 of them. So you can make a pretty good case that these 24 elders in the heavenly scene represent a priesthood. Jesus talks about that those who overcome will be dressed in white. Again, there's not necessarily a connection to the priests, because white means pure. That's fine. But how about the incense we talked about last time? The bowls of incense, where the priests, one of their primary jobs when they went into the holy place was to offer up the incense. 24 hours a day it was supposed to be offered up. So twice a day they had to make sure there's enough incense, right? So the prayers that we offer up are a priestly thing. The Apostle Paul, I thought, treats this idea of priesthood in an interesting way. Because, like in Romans 15:16, for example, he said he was given the priestly duty of proclaiming the gospel of God so the Gentiles might become an offering acceptable to God, sanctified by the Holy Spirit. So Paul was making these parallels between his role and what the priests of the Old Testament did. But see, he doesn't see himself as a part of the tribe of Levi who came through Aaron. Because isn't it true the only priests in Israel were from Levi through Aaron? Very select group. And only men whose bodies were whole. You couldn't be deformed or anything like that. You couldn't be a eunuch or anything and be a priest. So it's a really select number of people who could be priests and serve. But Paul saw this widening of the idea of priesthood in the New Covenant. And to him, a part of the priestly role we play is to announce the message of Christ, of his kingdom. Now, how does that connect to the Old Testament priests? They were entrusted with the job of guarding the law. Now, were they the only ones who were supposed to know the law? Certainly not. An entire nation has already vowed to keep it. So, what would you assume about the whole nation? They should know. Like, how can you keep a law you are totally ignorant of, correct? But the priests, and here's the connection I wanted to make for you. The priests in the kingdom were the ministers of the king's government. So we'll just pause on this for a moment and then move on. But when you go to the Old Testament, the entire tribe of Levi was denied inheritance in the Promised Land. When they got to the Promised Land, every tribe of Jacob was supposed to get a chunk of the land, right? Cut it up. Except one, Levi's tribe. What's the deal? Like, we were marching with you guys. We went eating manna all day like you guys. We're fighting. Why do we get no land? Do you remember what God said? Why do they not get land as an inheritance? What is their inheritance? He said, I will be their inheritance. Well, what does that mean? That doesn't put food on the table. So this is actually true. The Levites and the priests through Aaron's line had a bit of a disadvantage compared to the other tribes. Now, they were going to get towns within all the other tribes' land. Like, they weren't homeless. They were offered towns. But they were always like guests, in this other tribe's land. So what it meant was they had the privilege of ministering for the king, who was always meant to be Yahweh. He was supposed to be the king. Do you remember when that changed? It never really fundamentally changed. But when did they start to have a different king in Israel?
Saul.
Good. They said to Samuel, we want a human king. Samuel's like, that's not a good idea. That's going to bite you in the bottom if you do this. We still want it. Okay. So then Yahweh says to Samuel, let them have their king. It isn't you they have rejected. It's me they have rejected as their king. I'm not good enough for them. They want to go a different route. Now, if Yahweh was supposed to be the king of the kingdom, he set this up. I'm not making this up. He set it up in Israel that he would have a governmental structure of the priests. They were like his servants in the palace. They were like his, administrators for his government. So, when the people of Israel were giving their tithe, what was that really? That was their 10% tax to take care of God's priests, because their livelihood is going to come from serving the king. So any human king is going to tax you. Why? Because he's got to run a government, Where's he going to get that money? He taxes the people. Now, why are they paying the tax? Because we're really glad to have a government structure. It's really nice to have roads and people, protecting us from bandits and all the rest, fighting wars on our behalf. That's one reason why we have to be careful how we talk about and deal with tithing in the New Covenant, because we don't have this anymore. Anyway, side issue. But the tithe and a lot of the things that God said that the people were to bring was not to make God rich. Duh. He doesn't need any material benefit from anybody. Right? I mean, if I bring God an ox, he's not like, hot dog, this is a great month for me. Like, he's got them all. He even said that in the Psalms. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. It's not like I'm going to add to his bounty. So why are they told to bring so much? It's because his servants need to be taken care of. If they don't get it from the citizens, they don't get it. They're stuck. So just keep this in mind. There is a clear connection between the priesthood and the kingdom of God. The priests were the servants of the king administering his government. Now put that together with the new covenant picture, and you get this idea. In our tradition, the Restoration movement, we have made much of the idea that there is a priesthood of all believers. Is everybody familiar with that phrase? Priesthood of all believers was the Restoration movement's way of trying to push back against the idea that there's the clergy, the special priesthood, and then the laity. The clergy do God's work and the laity just pay. Now think about this. They pay the taxes by giving their money, and they benefit from the priests. And this is the way, if you look at the structure of the Roman Catholic Church and a lot of high church things, this is the Old Testament model, not the New Testament model. The King, Jesus, has his governmental officials, the clergy, and the populace. What are they supposed to do? Well, of course, show up to our things, but also pay the money so that we can run the show, you know? Very Old Testament model. You won't find that in the New Testament. So we refer to the priesthood of all believers, which is to say we are all ministers of the government of God. Amen?
Amen.
So the pastor who might teach more often than most other people is doing one job that you may be not called to do, but you are called to do something else because you're gifted for it. This is the idea of the priesthood of all believers. All of us are meant to be serving the king, benefiting the body, and being benefited by the body, just like the priesthood of the Old Testament. Everybody is called to be a priest. And that's why I keep focusing on who's being talked about. It's not a part of the purchased. It's all of the purchased. All of the purchased of Jesus are to be the kingdom and the priests. And then, what does he say next? Why does he want them to be a kingdom and priests? So that they can do what?
Serve God.
Oh, never forget. And our modern American Christian culture will make it easy to forget, I guarantee. But never forget that we are not central to Jesus' mind and heart. Who is? His Father. Never forget that. That doesn't mean that you're unimportant or anything like that. Just remember with me, and this is why I changed the lyrics in that one song, Above All. To say that he thought of me above all, when he's dying on the cross, I'm like, who was he talking to while he hung there? Not to me. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Who's he talking to? To his Father. Why is he on the cross? His Father called him to be. Now, did he love us? Did his love move him to die for us? Absolutely. We just read that in Peter, who loved us, and right? But, Revelation chapter 1. But my point is, Jesus' goal was not just because he really wanted us to be kingdom and really wanted us to be priests because it would make us feel good. According to this declaration, who is meant to be the ultimate beneficiary of everything Jesus did? His Father. Because now the Father has the kingdom he is supposed to have. He has people in his kingdom who actually want to serve him and will do it even when it hurts. Who will do it even when people threaten their lives. They're like, go for it. I got to serve my king. And the Father is benefiting from what Jesus is doing. Who else is benefiting? Me, you know, like I never want to take away from that. I just want to make sure that's not all we're seeing. The Father is so much his obsession. And that the reason that's important is he's modeling that for us. Amen?
Amen.
Let me do things for the Father. Even when no one else knows it's happening, even when no one else thinks it's a good idea, if the Father's happy, oh, that's all it takes. Now, I'll say this and then we'll move on to the next part. When Jesus was in the garden, did any of his apostles understand what he was about to deal with? No. Were any of his apostles urging him on in his mission to go suffer and die? No. In fact, what did Peter say? Never, Lord, I'll never let this happen to you. No one knew. No one was rooting him on. No one was telling him what a great thing he was about to do. In fact, they were trying to talk him out of it. When Jesus is in the garden, the only reason, he himself did not want this. The only will, the only voice that told him this is the way that we need to go was Father's. And that was all he needed. Now, most of us probably aren't there yet. Oh, I'll just speak for myself. I'm not there yet. I still need other voices to agree with God's to get me focused a lot of times. Because there's a lot of voices that disagree with God constantly. So I need my church family to remind me God's will. I need the Holy Spirit to be reminding me God's will. I need the Word to shout it at me, what God's will is. And then I'm like, you're right. Let's do it for the Father. I am becoming more and more like Jesus, though, and we all should be, where we can get to the point where even when no one else can make any sense of what we're about to do, and they will try to talk us out of it, if I know it's the Father, let's go. Just you. That's all. You're the only one that needs to get this for me to know I need to do it. Paul was in that boat, actually. I don't know if you remember this part of Paul's story in the book of Acts, but he was being told by the Holy Spirit that if he went back to Jerusalem, he'd be arrested, and he didn't know what else. Something bad's going to happen. And the Holy Spirit had let other people know, like prophetically, I guess. And so when he went on his goodbye tour of different churches, it says, prompted by the Holy Spirit, they're begging him not to go. Agabus, the prophet, even came to Paul, said, let me have your belt. Took his belt. He wrapped Paul's own hands with his own belt and said, you're going to be led away just like this if you go. Everywhere Paul went, people are trying to talk him out of this. And you know what his answer was to everybody? My life doesn't matter to me. I just need to do what Jesus said to do and finish the work he gave me. So I'm going. I love you. Bye. That's what I'm talking about. The love of the Father. That's why Jesus died for us, so we'd be that kind of people. Yeah.
The people said that the Holy Spirit was trying to talk, wanted Paul not to go.
I wrestled through this, and so here's where I've landed on that. Because that sounds like Paul's fighting the Spirit on that, right? If the church... So the language actually speaks of that they were... I can't remember what the NIV says. Something like prompted or whatever. What I think that means is the Spirit had revealed that this would happen to him, like through Agabus, for instance. Not necessarily that he shouldn't go, but had revealed what would happen to him. I think they took that information and, out of love for Paul, came up with their, don't do it. Just like Jesus revealed to the apostles, I'm going to go suffer and be rejected and die. The apostles took that information. Peter's like, no, that's not happening. I think that's what happened. That's the only way I can make sense of it. Otherwise, Paul was just being a stubborn, whatever. So he died to purchase us so we would be a kingdom and priests to serve his God. Yes. But look at the last part. Yeah, so very literally this says, and they will be kings. Now that's very gender specific. I think that's one reason why the NIV changes it. But can we say that it's not just males involved? Do you think that's fair? Sure, come on now. So they will be kings, and just like a lot of languages, male things include female when it's a big group, like in Spanish, So they will be ruling or reigning as kings. I think you could say queens in the case of the females. Where? This is important. Where are they going to reign?
On the earth.
What? How does that make sense? Because when the disciples of Jesus are receiving this vision in the first century, they don't look anything like royalty. The way Paul put it for he and his fellow servants of God, they were refuse. They were the last in the line of the conquered ones. And he was referring to when Rome would conquer a place, they would bring in the slaves that they were taking from that place, and there would be a procession of victory. So the conquering general and his armies up front, and everyone's like, oh, our Roman heroes! And behind them are all these dejected, conquered peoples, the slaves, being brought in the rear. And he's like, that's us! In this world, we are the garbage of the world. So how does this make sense? Like these suffering saints receiving these words, they're hearing the words. And what is the verb tense here? Does it say they are reigning on the earth?
They will.
Will reign.
Okay. Now, this gives us courage. This gives us hope. Because I could be, in fact, could I use an Old Testament story to illustrate? I could be David, anointed for kingship, being chased around by the current crazy king, Saul. I have chances to kill him if I want, but I honor. He's the king right now. He's God's anointed. Living in caves, just not living the kingly life at all. I mean, this guy's, again, refuse. He's hunted and wanted. But when the time came for God to take out Saul and his family, then at the proper time, David would ascend to the throne and God would establish his throne forever. That's exactly, I shouldn't say it that way. That is poetically the story we're living right now. We're the Davids being hunted down by the false kingdom of the world, waiting for when God will make it so, our kingship starts. What we mustn't do is what the church has been guilty of in the past, when it got entangled in politics. We mustn't try to force our power to the forefront too early. We mustn't try to take up the kingship before God's given it to us. At the moment, the other king is still pulling a lot of strings in our world. What we're going to do is trust Jesus' process of sharing the gospel, living the gospel, push back the darkness his way, and then when he's ready, and this is what Revelation shows us so beautifully, when he's ready, he'll pull the trigger, take down the false kings, and let his true faithful ones finally reign with him. So, have we seen Jesus promise that his faithful ones will reign with him? Have we seen that anywhere yet? Didn't he have that as promises to his overcomers, his conquerors? In fact, it's at the end of chapter 2, verse 26. To the one who is victorious, who does my will to the end. That sounds like a kingdom and priest kind of person right there, who serves his Father. I will give authority over the nations. That one will rule them with an iron scepter, dash them to pieces like pottery, just as I have received authority from my Father. And didn't he say it again? Where is it? I think it was to the final church, wasn't it? Yeah, go to chapter 3, verse 21. The one who is victorious, or the one who conquers, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne, just as I was victorious and sat down with my Father on his throne. Oh man, we're going to see this unfold before our eyes in the vision. Please keep your eyes open for that. Because if you don't know what your future is meant to look like in his eternal kingdom, how can you prepare for it well? A lot of people are convinced the best thing that they can do is just be a decent person until Jesus comes back or they die. And then every good thing's going to kick up, because then I'll be happy in heaven and all will be well. The picture we actually get in the scriptures is that he's told us ahead of time who we're called to be so that we can get ready for it now. What is the parable of the talents all about? The one who was faithful with the little job they were given, which wasn't that little, by the way, but comparatively little job, when the master came back and saw, you did a great job. I could trust you. Here, take over this massive thing that I want you to do. But the one who was kind of selfish and gun-shy and self-protecting, who hid it in the ground, and the master came back, what did he say? Well, that's disappointing. But hey, enjoy my kingdom now that you're here. No, he's so mad at him. Because you totally wasted my time, your time. This was, you did me no benefit. And what did he do to that servant? Do you remember?
Cast him in the outer darkness.
He's gone. Now, I'm not trying to say that if you don't reach a certain level of productivity for Jesus, you're out. That's not the point. The point is, am I focused on benefiting my king with the chance I have in this world? Or am I focused on making sure I get in? That might be a deal breaker for Jesus. Because can I ask you, do you fit his purpose for dying for you if that's how you're thinking? You are not serving as a priest, certainly. You're not serving his Father, certainly. And you don't fit the kingdom model because the king is not central to your life. So this is all of this. I hope this isn't just like, another picture of the weird scene of Revelation. All of this is calling us to the full life. because we know where this is headed, we know what to do right now, right? Amen, amen. Okay. Any thoughts on verse 10 before we move on?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Is anywhere in the book of Revelation, does it refer to the bride of Christ?
Yes, it speaks of his wedding, and it speaks of the New Jerusalem being like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. So, not directly, like a lot of us might think, but the language is there and the comparison is there to his people. Yeah.
I didn't know if it was just at this point the priests and those who serve him, or if it was referred to as the bride of Christ.
That comes
Or if that
way
was
at the
just-
end. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
There was a separation between the two.
And actually, I mean, Paul hints at the idea of the bride because he speaks of Christ and the church being like a man and wife. He also says that he was pledged, he was meant to present the church he was talking to as a pure bride. Right? But also, in the end, you'll see, the city of Jerusalem is referred to or compared to a bride dressed for her husband. So I think that language is beautiful and real. All right, let's look at verse 11. This is, oh my goodness. Okay, so if you're picturing it, we've got the throne, whoa, and the one on it. We've got the 4 living beings, weird, but whoa. We've got the 24 elders. Who are they? They're awesome. We've got the Lamb who showed up. Oh man, he's the Lamb. He's got 7 horns, 7 eyes. He's been slain, but look, here he is standing, right? He's got the scroll in his hand, ready to authoritatively handle the business of God. And then we see the worship of the 28 beings that are surrounding the throne. And now, this place is about to get crowded. What does he say? Then I looked and I heard. This is a lot of the vision. You're going to be not just seeing things, but hearing things, right? I looked and heard the voice of many angels. Now, how many angels, John? Let's see. Numbering thousands upon thousands. Now, that's not too much for us. We just saw the Super Bowl, some of us who cared to. And you see stands full of people. You go to a game at Penn State. Thousands upon thousands. We're like, okay, I'm cool with that. But then, he said, and 10,000 times 10,000. Now, let's pretend like he's being actually mathematical. How many would that be? Well, 1,000 thousand is a million. So what's 10,000, 10,000? So you just take all the zeros and you put them in there. So we got 8 zeros, which is that right? No, that's only 7. 100 million. What? It's not, but let's say this is mathematical. That would mean, and this doesn't include the thousands upon thousands, that would mean he is seeing and hearing like just under a third of the American population in this place. So far he's had 29, 30, 31 beings. No, is that right? Yes. Total, right? Now, little old him with these 31 beings, suddenly it's just whoosh. And here's one thing I wonder, because it's a vision, who knows? I wonder if he saw them actually come in and file in and fill up the place, like when I go to Brenna's or Emma's choir thing and they all take the stands, and line up to sing. Or was this, he was focused on the 28 worshiping, and then he looks up, whoa, when did you get here? Right? I don't know. He doesn't describe them coming. He just looks up and says he sees them. Crazy. But I said this isn't mathematical, and the reason I say that is the word for 10,000 in the Greek language is where we get our word myriad. And the way that the Greeks would use this word, when they use it together like John did, myriad of myriad, or myriad myriads, that was their way of indicating innumerable, beyond counting. I mean, that's just how you would communicate it in Greek. So I do not think that John... what was that again? It's not like he counted, and I don't know that the Holy Spirit zapped him with a number. I think he was a human being looking at this seemingly unlimited number going, how do I describe that? Myriad, myriads. Okay? And everyone's like, okay, gotcha. Beyond number is a great way to translate that. So, can you picture that?
No.
I can't. I don't even know. Because I don't know how big this place is in the first place. He didn't describe walls or something. So I don't know. But again, even a stadium full. Even when the inauguration of the president's coming up, they're filling the Capitol streets with people wanting to hear the inauguration. Even that number doesn't even come close to this. But he doesn't say he sees them. What does he say? He hears the voices. Now, Isaiah in Isaiah 6, he has an undisclosed number of seraphim. Let's just say there's 4, maybe 6, who knows, right? There's some small number probably of seraphim. And their voices that worship God with holy, holy, holy is so powerful that it shakes the building and its threshold, right? Now, let's take an innumerable number of heavenly beings and they start to speak as one. What would that do? I hope he's in the spirit because his physical body would explode. Right? Even if his eardrums stopped working, the vibrations would make his body fall apart, right? So he hears this.
And not that he counts the people, he counts the sounds of the people.
Right, yeah, and this is how many beings there are.
You can't count the sound of 100 million people.
What is, wow. And by the way, I don't know what these beings, these angelic beings, sound like, but I'm guessing they're not whispering. Can you imagine 100 million? Worthy is the Lamb. Even if they did whisper, that would be pretty intense. Okay.
Terrified of one.
Yes, right?
Imagine 100.
Later on, when John's getting a tour from an angel, he falls twice. He falls down to worship that being. That's how glorious the being is. And that being's like, cut that out. No. I'm a servant like you. An innumerable host of them, and they're circling the throne and the living creatures and the elders. He's surrounded, okay? Oh my gosh. And what does he hear? All of them saying in a loud voice, you're exactly right to point that out, worthy is whom? Who is the focus of their worship?
Lamb.
Again with the Lamb. In chapter 4, God the Father gets 2 focus of worship. Here in chapter 5, the Lamb gets 2 focus of worship. But this time it's not just the creatures of the heaven so far, it's now this innumerable host of angels. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. They just can't stop. I looked at each word, and I was tempted to go through each word with you, but I don't think it would be as fruitful as the time it would require. But there was a few of these I was wondering, what does it even mean for the Lamb to receive that? To receive power, doesn't he already have all of it?
It just says he's worthy to receive it.
Yeah. But I don't even know, what would that mean, to receive power? God touches you and suddenly you're beefed up like Samson? I'm just wondering, what are they... Actually, that's a good call, because I had to look at the difference between power and strength. What's the diff?
Control. Yeah, control.
So more of an authoritative thing, maybe. Well, the word for power here is the dunamis that you read that's over 100 times used. That's the miracle power. It's not just miracle power, but it represents your innate ability to do something. So it would even include things like I can make coffee. It's your ability. The other word for strength is a word about forcefulness. This is about actual physical ability to, So if you have the strength, you can lift up a 100-pound dumbbell. If you don't, you don't. That's what that is. It's physical force. So they're related, but they're not the same. Wealth, we understand. Wisdom. Now, Paul says in Colossians, Jesus is the treasury of all wisdom and knowledge. He's worthy to receive it, but I'm not even sure what that would mean. I'm thinking through it, and I'll share with you my thought, but I don't know for sure.
Doesn't he actually already have all these things?
Right. Yeah. To the fullest, we assume. Honor, I get that. You're worthy to receive honor. The word honor there has to do with being spoken well of, praised. Totally, he's worthy to receive glory. Meaning that people would express to him his greatness. And even brightness is a way that glory is used. Because Paul talks about how the sun has a certain kind of glory, the stars have their own kind of glory, and the different heavenly bodies have different glories. And praise, we get that. Why would he be worthy of praise? Totally, I get that. So, for a few of these I was thinking. I was trying to bring it to the human level to see if I could connect it to the divine level. For a king to be worthy to receive strength or power, for instance, as I understand on a human level, that would mean that I, the king, am worthy to receive the benefits of your strength. So your work, I am worthy to receive the benefits of your work. So that would look like tribute, right, to a king on earth. The oxen and all the effort and work that you're putting in to accomplish and to build and to grow crops, I'm worthy to receive that from you. So, if I'm understanding it right, it's the outcome of your strength. It's the outcome of your power that I'm worthy to receive. Now, that may not be true. I'm just trying to think this through. What does that mean?
Do you think this is partly, it mentions the lamb that was slain.
Mm-hmm.
Is this part of him reestablishing himself on his throne in heaven?
Yeah, I think you may have been going, we talked about this, but the moment that he goes to the one on the throne and takes the scroll, it seems to indicate this is his coronation. Like this is him being, yes, he is king. That's exactly right. Especially because no one else was around who could do that. So the point is, whatever it means, the point is he's worthy of all of it. Now, what's crazy is, number one, he's called a lamb. Who thinks of a lamb being top dog? Cute little thing, It's either a potential sheep or it's food. That's all it is. But this lamb, they clarify what's different about this lamb.
He was killed.
He was slain, past tense, and is presently worthy. He is the one that he talked about himself before. I was dead, behold, I'm alive. For how long? Forever and ever. And I hold what? Keys of death and Hades. Woo! Now, okay, I'm going to jam 5 minutes worth of this, okay? Look at verse 13 with me. This is actually hugely significant, so if I run out of time, we'll pick it up next time. Yeah. Because we need to talk about where in the story of earth is this going on, okay? So, just to review. In chapter 4, he saw the 4 creatures worship the one on the throne. He saw the 24 elders worship the one on the throne. Here in chapter 5, all 28 of them worship the Lamb, and then the innumerable angels worship the Lamb. So each of them has received worship twice so far. Now, then I heard from every creature, get this, in heaven, on earth, under the earth, and, not to forget, the sea, and all that is in them. Which I thought creature would cover that. But, he's using as broad, fully encompassing language as possible, right? And can I just summarize it by saying, what is all of creation declaring? To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. Now they're bringing the worship to them both. Twice to the one on the throne, twice to the Lamb, and now they're both seen as the center of the worship. Be praise and honor and glory and power forever and ever. Wait a second. If you're the first church receiving this, or the first 7 churches receiving this, you're sitting here in the Roman Empire, and most of the world around you is pagan. They're worshiping false gods, all the rest. They have no concept of Yahweh or of Jesus, his son. They get none of this, right? And they read this vision of the Creator being honored, of the slain Lamb being honored, purchasing us, and then they hear that every creature, all of creation, is worshiping the Father and the Lamb. What? When does that happen? When does it happen that God and his Son Jesus receive all that is due them from their creation? So why is it showing up here at the end of chapter 5? So, can I give you the quick answer as I understand it? Remember what I told you before, there's a difference between the timing in the vision and the timing on planet Earth. That this vision actually isn't a straightforward story being told from beginning to end. What I want to suggest to you, and you can decide what you're thinking about it, what we just read in verse 13 is the conclusion of the first cycle of the whole story. God created all things. He brought about the Lamb to purchase those from the world who will be His. And then we see the consummation of the whole thing when all of creation acknowledges God and the Lamb. Now we know that is not going to happen before Jesus comes back. Amen?
Amen.
Because this must include Satan, his followers, all the people of other religions. They're all included in this. Or the language doesn't make any sense, right? It includes every living being. Even the dead, apparently, because it says under the earth, which is where the dead go. And where do the dead show up in the vision? It's at the very end for judgment. So what I would like to suggest to you, because this is not a beginning to end narrative and vision, what John just saw was the whole thing. But such a general and small picture of it. What we're going to see in the next round, starting in chapter 6, he kind of rewinds the tape to get back to the seals, because he hasn't dealt with that at all. He's just talking about the Lamb's got it. Here we go. Let's worship. Now the vision, not John, is going to rewind to get back to that seals business, because John is still wondering. All the readers are still wondering, but what did God decide? There's a decision. Someone can open the decision, and we haven't gotten to it yet. But here we're at the end of the story. He's like, I know. I'll get back to it. So getting back to the seals. So, if you're willing to receive it, I would like to suggest to you chapters 4 and 5 by themselves are the story. There's just a lot left out. There's a lot we want to know. And so God's kind enough to say, okay, I'm going to rewind. Let's look at it from a different angle. Let's go a little bit more detailed. Zoom in the lens. And so if that makes any sense to you at all, even if for a while you're willing to hear me out on this, this week, if you have the time and inclination, go back and read chapter 6 forward, thinking to yourself, if the clock has been rewound, I'm still at a portion of that chapter 4 and 5 vision. Where am I in that part of the vision? Which part of the time of chapter 4 and 5 am I? And when you get to chapter 6, it's clearly right after he's taken the scroll. Okay, now, we got the scroll now, Jesus. Now what happens with the scroll? Well, let me show you. Okay, so you're going to see familiar characters like the 4 living creatures and all that, but now we're just going to pick up the story from that point and watch it unfold with more detail from there. Otherwise, you try to make sense of the fact the entire cosmos worships God and the Lamb. Now let's get to punishing wicked people. What? Doesn't make any sense at all, right? So
it's very similar to a lot of movies made that way.
He's exactly right.
It's not something unfamiliar to
Yeah.
us.
I watch a lot of TV shows. They're right in the middle of this really bizarre and unexplainable thing that's going on, and you're like, what? I just got into the middle of the story. And then what do? They fade out, and they're like, 5 hours earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was really concerned there. Yeah, exactly right. This is storytelling, right? But what a beautiful story is being told. Any last thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of glad I'm told the ending at this point before, all the horrors that are to come.
Amen, brother.
To just hear all these horrors, I'd probably close it and
Oh, no.
yeah.
Yep.
It's like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
But to hear the good news ending, it's like, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just keep reading that verse 13 and 5, 13 and 14 when you get too deep.
Yes. Oh yeah, everyone worships again. Woo! Yeah. Yeah, if you, like, another silly example, but if you saw the originally made Star Wars movies, and you go watch them back, watch the prequels, there's a lot of times where it looks like the heroes might be in terrible trouble. Are you ever worried they're going to die? No, because they got to be in 4, 5, and 6. We're cool. We're good, It's like that. Oh, yeah, everyone worshipped. Okay. All right, it's going to be all right. Amen. Well, I hope this encourages you on a lot of levels, because that's what the book of Revelation is for. It is not meant to unsettle and creep us out as disciples. That's a part of our process. But it's ultimately meant to encourage you, to challenge you, to give you everything you need to be faithful to the true king while the usurper king comes after you with all he's got. That is the goal of the book of Revelation.